All right, let's dive into two truly revolutionary technologies that could completely redefine how we have children. And we're going to zero in on Singapore, a country where the future of this stuff is being debated right now, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Take a look at this number, 0.97. That was Singapore's total fertility rate in 2023. Now, just to keep a population stable, you need a rate of about 2.1. This is less than half of that. We're talking about a demographic freefall. And this isn't just some vague concern. It is a full-blown crisis. I mean, the source material for this explainer puts it bluntly. This low birth rate poses an existential threat to its survival as a nation-state. When you start hearing language like that, you know the search for solutions is going to be urgent and probably pretty radical. So, why is this one number so incredibly dangerous for Singapore in particular? To really get that, we need to understand what makes this a true demographic crunch for the city-state. You see, unlike a lot of other countries, Singapore doesn't have a ton of natural resources. Its entire model, its economy, its security, it's all built on one thing: its people. A highly skilled workforce drives the economy, and a steady stream of young people ensures its national security. When your population starts shrinking this fast, both of those pillars, they start to wobble. Okay, so with a problem this huge, science is of course stepping in with some seriously game-changing ideas. We're going to break down two of them. Both are about creating life in a lab, but as you'll see, they do it in completely different ways. First up, we've got in vitro gametogenesis, or IVG. Now, the core idea here is, well, it's pretty mind-blowing. Scientists can take something like a skin cell from a person, reprogram it, and basically turn it into a working sperm or egg cell that carries that person's exact DNA. It's an attempt to perfectly copy the natural process, just, in a petri dish. And then there's this, stem cell-based embryo models, or SCBMs. You might also hear them called synthetic embryos. And with these, forget sperm and eggs entirely. This tech just bypasses them, creating something that looks and acts like an embryo, straight from stem cells. So this isn't about replicating nature anymore. This is about creating something totally new. And that brings us to the most critical distinction. IVG, at the end of the day, still follows the biological script. You make an egg, you make a sperm, you have fertilization. SCBMs, they just throw that whole script right out the window. One mimics nature. The other is a kind of creation that's a whole lot closer to cloning. And trust me, that distinction means everything. So this core difference between natural and synthetic is really the key to understanding why these two technologies are on completely different paths, especially in a place like Singapore. You have to understand, Singapore's whole approach is deeply shaped by cultural values that put a huge emphasis on family, on lineage, on blood ties. And the laws reflect that. They prioritize what's called genetic affinity, which is basically a biological link between both parents and their child, all within the traditional structure of a marriage between a man and a woman. Okay, but before we dive into how those values are shaping the rules, we have to ask a more fundamental question. Even if these technologies become totally safe and widely available, could they actually fix a country's birth rate problem? Is this a realistic solution, or is it more of a fascinating scientific sideshow? Well, to get a reality check, just look at the tech we already have, like IVF. Even in places like Australia and Japan, where it's super common, it only accounts for less than 10% of all births. And something like IVG would probably help an even smaller, more specific group of people. So the bottom line is pretty clear. This is not a silver bullet for a national demographic crisis. So when you put all that together, the deep cultural values, and the fact that this won't be a magic fix, how is Singapore going to decide what's okay and what's not? Let's get into the specifics of what's likely to get a green light and what's going to hit a brick wall. And this table really gets to the heart of the prediction. For SCBMs, the synthetic embryos, the road is pretty short. It's almost certain they'll be banned for reproduction, period. But for IVG, it's a much more complicated story. It's likely to be allowed for things like treating infertility or preventing genetic diseases, but only within a marriage. Anything that challenges that traditional family model, like same-sex or solo parenthood, a hard no. The line is drawn really, really clearly. And the logic here is actually pretty simple. IVG helps create a child that's genetically related to both parents, which fits perfectly within Singaporean law and culture. SCBMs, though, they create a genetic copy of just one person. That's seen as human cloning, something that's already a big no-no under existing laws. So the kinds of IVG applications that are likely to get the green light are all about restoring what's seen as a natural function. Think of it as using tech to get back to the traditional model, helping couples who are infertile, allowing older married women to conceive, or stopping a horrible genetic disease from being passed on. So, what's definitely off the table? Well, pretty much anything that breaks that traditional mold. That means no new family structures for same sex or solo parents. It also rules out really ethically thorny areas, like creating a child for someone who has already passed away. And you can bet there will be a hard line against creating designer babies or mass producing eggs and sperm. All of that is just seen as crossing a line. So, what does this all mean? What does Singapore's really cautious approach tell us about what's coming? Well, their choices offer a powerful glimpse into how every society, not just Singapore, is going to have to wrestle with technology that changes the very beginning of life itself. At the end of the day, it looks like Singapore isn't just going to jump on every new piece of tech. The prediction is for a super conservative path, a very limited, very controlled use of IVG that actually reinforces the traditional family, while totally rejecting the more radical idea of synthetic embryos. For Singapore, it seems social stability is way more important than scientific possibility. And this whole situation forces all of us to face some massive questions. I mean, this technology is going to be expensive. So who gets to use it? Does this just create a new kind of inequality? And as science keeps making more things possible, how do we as a society decide where the ethical line is between treatment and just enhancement? Really, Singapore's dilemma is a preview for the rest of the world. Which leaves us with one final huge question. The ability to create sperm from a skin cell or an embryo without an egg, it's happening. Science is pushing these boundaries every single day. The real challenge ahead for all of us isn't going to be a scientific one. It's going to be a human one, deciding which lines we are and are not willing to cross.